Would you like to know how to grow a business without going out of business? Now, what the hell do I mean by that? What I mean is that we could increase the revenue in our business, but the bottom line isn't getting fed, and therefore our profit margins are killing us and push us out of business. Something to really pay attention to. We have someone that has made the Inc. 5000 6 different times. Getting ready to share all that. Coming right up.
So here's the big question. How are underdogs like us, who have all the odds stacked against us, who get counted out by everyone else and even laughed at, how do we show the world our greatness and win? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Zachary Babcock, and this is Underdog Empowerment. My name is Zachary Babcock.
What is going on, Underdog fam? Zachary Babcock here, and I'm here to help you scale your business to 6 and 7 figures without the stress, overwhelm, and frustration of trial and error. And on this show, we bring you new episodes each and every Monday and Friday morning. That way you can kick your week off right and head into the weekend ready to win as an underdog. And this show is brought to you in part by Mike Young at themakeovermaster.com. If you're a 6-figure plus entrepreneur and you're ready to take your business image to the next level, head on over to themakeovermaster.com and apply for one of their free complete business image makeover consultations. And today, guys, we're going to talk about a key metric that you need to be paying attention to as you grow your business, because you could be growing your business and growing your revenue and still be slowly killing yourself because you're not paying attention to the margins, the profit margins, and it's killing your bottom line, and therefore you no longer can survive in the business world, and now it's time to close up shop. So the person that we have coming on today, his company is he's hit the Inc. 5000 6 different times. Just absolutely crushing it. Someone that has led by example and that has some very valuable information for us underdog entrepreneurs. And we have none other than my man, Todd Palmer. Todd, what is going on, my man? How you doing?
Hey, it's a great day here in Detroit, Michigan. How you been?
Dude, I'm doing fantastic. I'm really excited you carved out your time to come on here and serve the Underdog fam. Really excited to get into these topics that we have today. But before we dive into the meat and potatoes of this content, could you share a little bit about your backstory, how you got to where you're at today, and why you're so passionate about what you do?
Absolutely. So yeah, I started my original company, Diversified Industrial Staffing, 22 years ago for $15,000 with a loan from one of those 3 F's we all love as entrepreneurs, especially us underdogs: friends, family, and fools. And started that off, grew it rather rapidly. We were profitable on the 72nd day of being in business. Very fortunate, very lucky. The economy was very similar to what it is today. If you've got people, companies will hire because the country is at full employment. Did that, had a good run for about 9 years, came into 2006. Things were going really well. Decided I was going to step out of the business, start another company, put someone else in charge. And within a relatively short time frame, found that we were $600,000 in debt, money I had personally guaranteed, 60 days away from running out of cash. And I needed to make some swift and rapid changes. And so we did. And we made some changes. Actually, I terminated my entire company, started over, and we went on to make the Inc. 5000 6 out of 7 years as one of America's fastest growing companies.
Wow. That's impressive, man. I'm super excited to dive into these topics, man. Real quick before we go into that, what was like your thought process as you realized you were $600,000 in debt and you fired your entire company and had to start over? Like, what was your thought process? What kind of emotions were you going through, and what triggered you to be able to pull off that move and take that crazy risk and be able to turn it around?
To be honest, because I think a lot of us underdog entrepreneurs, or even, I've got friends of mine who are doing, almost $1 billion in revenue, and we all have this big challenge: is we have a chip on our shoulder. And that chip motivates us, we think. But sometimes that chip, at least for me, became an anchor. And that anchor created a thing called imposter syndrome, where I thought I had to have all the answers all the time. I had to be the oracle. And when I didn't know, holy cow, if my staff only knew what a complete idiot I am, if they only knew what a failure I think I am. And that's what I was thinking in those moments. And so to get out of that, to shift out of that mindset and kind of face that brutal reality of the debt and the running out of cash, I actually hired a coach. I hired a guy with 20 plus years of staffing industry experience at the time. And he came in and kind of did a couple things for me. One is he boosted my confidence. He believed in me, and he also made me look at the data. He made me look at the financial position that I was in, and he gave me some really strong advice that you can't focus on revenue all the time. You got to focus on the margin. If there's not enough margin in it, then don't do it. So a couple of different quick things that I learned is one, when I looked in the mirror and I let other people go, I knew the biggest bottleneck in the process was me. It was my fault, and I had to turn this thing around. So I took accountability, became responsible, looked at the data, made different decisions, and really specifically pivoted off of margin or into margin away from focusing just only on the revenue.
Yeah, man. So what are some key metrics that you were looking at? Like when you talk about margin, basically obviously profit margin and whatnot. Why do you think that's hard for underdog entrepreneurs like to really focus on that when we're so, a lot of us, in that 3 to 4 to 5 figure range, trying to scale up to 6 and 7 figures, we're like, oh shit, I got to make some money, and they're not really, they're not focused on like, hey, is this really, a wise, is this sustainable? Like what are some key things that you look at, and how did you, well, obviously you got a coach that helped you get into that, but what's some advice you give to the underdog entrepreneur doing that right now?
And even with the entrepreneurs that I work with today, through my company, Extraordinary Advisors, I focus on what is your key measurable for your business. So, for example, in the staffing business that we were in, we had to look at gross margin dollar per hour billed. That was our key number. That number had to be at a certain level, or we just simply could not take on the engagement. I've worked with companies that are in the construction space, and they're famous for, hey, I'm going to take any job during lean times to keep my guys working. If you can keep your guys working, but you have one hiccup in that process, and all of a sudden the job's underwater, you still got to pay everybody, you still got to complete it, and you're going to lose money on it. It's not worth doing. So it's got to be an acceptable margin per your industry. One of my clients right now, they're in a very unique technology space, and we took a look at their numbers, and we were able to add 10 margin points to it within a 30-day window by just pulling on a couple of levers, because they knew that their biggest measurement was dollars per hour of booked engagement. And they figured out what it costs to go into that, what they should be getting out of it, how long that engagement should run. So sometimes it's a formula, sometimes it's a number. It really just depends on the entrepreneur. But every business, I kid you not, Zach, every business has that one number that's the gas pedal to how much money you can make.
That's awesome, dude. I love that, because a lot of us we don't know that. You know what I'm saying? Just starting out, we don't know that. You get like we just talked about. You get caught up on the numbers, like, oh, if as long as I'm making this X amount of sales, it's going to be cool. But then you turn around a few months later and like, yeah, I made $50,000, but I only kept 2,000 of it. Like, holy shit, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, because really, if you think about it, then all you are is an unpaid collector for the IRS. You're bankrolling other people, and at the end of the day, one of my good friends is a guy named Mike McAllowitz, and he wrote a book called Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. One of the things he talks about is how do you pay yourself first, which can be a real challenge when you've got to pay your vendors, pay your rent, pay your expenses, pay the IRS, pay the government, pay for all these other things. How do you pay yourself first? And that can be a real challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs. But at the end of the day, if you can make more money doing your job elsewhere for someone else, then you've got to figure out, how do you make more money doing it for yourself? Or are you willing to trade some of those dollars for flexibility and freedom? Because a lot of entrepreneurs love the flexibility and freedom, and they'll work for a little bit less for that freedom and that power.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. So what are some key practical steps that you could do to, obviously looking at the numbers and stuff, but to pay yourself first, to make sure that you're, taken care of on all the fronts, so you can take care of, the IRS expenses, all that come with it? Sure.
Well, the biggest thing is you want to have a good accounting practice and a good accounting team behind you. And a lot of the stuff nowadays can be outsourced, and you can go virtual and get a lot of, virtual assistant, a virtual accounting person. But you got to know for your business and for your industry what that number is. And there's, going to somebody who is a specific an accountant who specializes in staffing, an accountant who specializes in manufacturing. Someone like that will know based upon their level of experience where you should be at. And if you're not there, then how do you get there? And certainly the rule of thumb is this: most businesses lose money for the first 3 to 5 years they're in business. So know that going in. Make sure you talk to your family about that. I've seen more entrepreneurs fail because they simply didn't tell their significant other what the ride they were signing up for on that crazy train. And at the end of the day, and I think we were talking about this earlier, most businesses, only 4.3% of businesses ever reach $1 million in sales. So if you can get there, that's a great number. But I know some people who are killing it, making $600,000, $700,000 in sales, but it margins at 50, 60%. So they're putting $300,000 to the bottom line. And that's really where the money can be made.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So what kind of advice would you give for the underdog entrepreneur that's currently, like, let's say at the 3, 4 to 5 figure range, and they're like got their sights set on the 7-figure mark, but they just don't know how to get there. Like they're trying all these different things, and they really need some help with their sales and marketing when it comes down to, and obviously outsourcing, getting the right people, for the bookkeeping and the teams in place, so they're not constantly spent, all their time working in the business where they can actually work on the business. What are some key first steps, for that person trying to get to the 6-figure mark first?
So I think the biggest challenge that a lot of younger entrepreneurs from the life cycle standpoint, or the solopreneur, run into is they believe in their idea, they believe in what they're doing, but they have a very hard time articulating that message to the buyer. They have a very hard time articulating what makes them special, cool, and unique. So you've got to, that's from a messaging standpoint, that's key. I think for me, when I look back at our journey and some of the things that we've done, it really started, I read a book called The Power of Why from Simon Sinek. And it talked about why, as entrepreneurs, we do what we do. And he used a lot of Steve Jobs examples and other people. And it wasn't necessarily that, Jobs didn't necessarily start off to make computers. What he wanted to do is he wanted to improve the education system, and he wanted to improve the classroom experience for kids. And the best way for them to get knowledge and learning, he felt, was to have a classroom on every desk. That was his original vision. And obviously, over the course of time, it morphed, but he always went back to those big goals. For us, at Diversified, we focused on how do we improve lives. So if we do a really good job of helping a candidate, for example, find a job they don't know exists, and we help a business find a candidate they don't know exists, then we're going to be compensated accordingly. If all we focus on is how do we make more money, it just doesn't work. That's not the way the laws of the universe seem to work. So if you've got somebody who has a great idea for a technology app, what problem does that app solve on a practical level? But just as importantly, why would somebody want to engage in your app? Why would somebody want to work in your environment? And it's amazing that we as recruiters can shift people from one company to the next based upon the culture. The culture starts with the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur starts with knowing who they are versus who they aren't. Because we're all, entrepreneurs, we're the crazy ones, right? We're the ones who are all over the board. We're the spacey kids who can't, focus for 2 seconds half the time. How do we distill that down so that people will want to follow our vision and follow our lead? So the leaders have to figure out why they're doing what they're doing, what problem the marketplace that solves, what makes them special, cool, or unique. And if they can't answer that, then they got to go back to the drawing board, because really, then they are a commodity. And when you're a commodity against a big commodity players, whether it's retail, again, tech, whatever, there's going to be somebody who's already probably beat you to that spot. So why would somebody engage with you versus engage with them? Well, it comes to your special sauce and what makes you special, and that comes with the entrepreneur knowing why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, man, I love that. What are some ways that you can go about figuring out that ideal avatar that you're talking about, figuring out their wants and needs and desires? Like, what are some specific ways that you can actually take your time to do the market research? Because a lot of underdog entrepreneurs don't do that. Like they don't even know that they need to do that. That's a key fundamental in any business.
Right. Well, I think the first thing is slow down, take a breath, meditate, whatever you got to do. But think about, it's really, it goes almost back to, the days of Ben Franklin when he would do the T-square. Here's the problem I want to solve. I want to solve the problem of X. And I'm going to do it this way. Here's the practical. Here's the how I'm going to do it. So jobs, perfect example. I want to get more education into the classroom. That's my why. I believe that we're shortchanging our children. We're shortchanging our future. These kids need to become more educated. Well, how do I do that? Well, they need computers. Okay. Well, how do we do that? Well, I can build a computer. I can outsource a computer. I can design I can design a computer. All right, so now I'm going to design a computer. Well, what's going to make my computer different than what was out at the time, which is HP or Dell or whomever? What's going to make my computer? Well, it's that feel, that tactile, that touch. It's that relationship, that ergonomic relationship, that tactile relationship a human being has with that machine. And he kind of worked his way back, but ultimately his goal was, how do I improve the educational experience for this generation, but also generations to come? So that's his driver. That's his why, so to speak. It's like, why do I do someone asked me the other day, why do I do Extraordinary Advisors? I don't need to do it. Well, I do it because I know how much it sucked to be an early stage entrepreneur. I know how much I didn't know, in the doubts and fears and concerns and second guessing I did. I know how painful that was. So I want to go into that space and help these people out so that maybe they'll suffer a little bit less. And if they suffer a little bit less, maybe they'll go home and be a little bit nicer to their kids, nicer to their wife, or go home and be nicer to their dog. I don't know. But it's really that essence within that legacy we leave. That's why people do things. But most entrepreneurs figure out, hey, I want to make a lot of money. Well, why? What's it going to do for you? And why would somebody buy it? It's a lot of kind of slowing down and seeing how you can do what you want to do and the best way to accomplish it.
I love that, man. So you've made the Inc. 500 6 different times. Like, that's really impressive right there. Obviously, to do that, you got to be a great leader. You got to have the vision, all these things that you just mentioned. What's your secret sauce in leading a company? What's your go-to, like the one thing that makes you different and stand out?
Wow, that's a great question. There is no silver bullet. There is no secret sauce, but I can tell you from experience, there's basically two things that I've learned. One is I found for my business that I'd rather hire for DNA versus hiring for resume. When I hire for the DNA, not the resume, I get better people. And I can teach a really good person to be a really good recruiter. I can't teach a good recruiter to be a good human being. And so much of today's work world, especially for millennials, is all based on team. And we at Diversified have the same situation. We have a team environment. The only person who has an office is me. Everybody else sits in a common area because they have to work together. And we've had people who've been with me now 12 plus years, and they stay. The work's okay. I mean, work is work, right? But they stay for their teammates. They stay for their friends. They stay for the relationships that they've cultivated over that time. And I think the second thing is to recognize as the leader, and I still struggle with this, that recognizing as the leader that failing is going to be part of every day in business. Something's not going to go right. You're going to fail forward. And how do you fail forward into success? And I think for me, especially when I was a younger entrepreneur, was to recognize it's part of the learning process and to be okay with it. And one of my favorite quotes is from one of my mentors, a guy named Dr. Danny Friedland. And he talks about how failure doesn't exist. It's a myth. It doesn't exist. Because failure, if you learn from what took place, you never failed. Because failure is nothing more than another step in your pathway to being successful. And so he just takes, in his mindset, he takes failure completely off the table. While I haven't reached that high enlightened state yet in life, boy, it's something certainly to strive for.
Yeah, man, absolutely. That's powerful stuff right there. I like how you mentioned, you really got into like building the culture of the company. Like when you're talking about leadership, you said you hire based on DNA versus resume. And as you're doing that, is it kind of like when you're building this culture, do you like set forth the vision like as a mission statement, and like do you just like, is that like how you attract the right DNA, or is like what would you say why that works for you?
Well, and it's never foolproof, so it doesn't always work. And then you have to make the decision as the leader. And this comes to firing people, And I've unfortunately through the course of being in business 20 plus years, I've had to fire a few people over the course of time. And certainly being a recruiter, we have to go on site and fire sometimes at our clients. And I always say to people, when you have to let somebody go, certainly recognize how did you get where you got to. So we're going to let Bob go today. The first thing is we're going to free Bob up to go do something he probably should be doing, but not doing it here. So if Bob can't sell for us, for example, because salespeople get fired a lot. Bob can't sell for us. Recognize that you're going to free him up to possibly go sell something else somewhere else. Or you're going to free him up to maybe go into a different line of work. But it's not an act of cruelty. It's really to reframing as an act of kindness. In regards to how to do it, we've figured out internally that we often use a team approach. And we'll sit with the employee. I did this today. We had a person come in. I met with them for 15 minutes to see if I could, if they gelled with me. And I asked them a series of questions. That went well. Then what I did is I brought in the three peers that they're going to be working closely with. And then those three people interview them and I leave the room. We call it kind of like the American Idol round. They sit with the three judges and they give it their best. And they can ask questions of a peer versus then different questions than they're going to ask the leader of the organization. And then the four of us sat down afterwards and say, pros and cons of the employee. This is what we like. This is what maybe there's some room for growth in. And we ended up not hiring this person for a variety of different reasons. But it was interesting. Same thing we all four of us came back to was the candidate's lack of sincerity, lack of authenticity has nothing to do with the person's resume. It has to do with our interaction as a human being, because we're in the human business as recruiters. We're dealing with people. We're not selling a product. We're not selling a commodity. Everybody's unique in their own way. And as a recruiter, we found that we have to have people who have a high level of authenticity. That's part of our recipe. So that's, just a little bit about how we have to do it.
I love that, dude. So what I get from that is, that could be, for a lot of underdog entrepreneurs, that could be a tough decision to make right there, having to let people go in your business, and by going through this process that you just laid out, Does that make that whole decision process a lot easier for you? And like when you go about having to make those tough decisions?
Well, typically the decision is either done of one of two categories. We use a thing called the people analyzer, and the people analyzer ties to our core values as an organization. And it's a list of 10 across the left side, a list of things across, 5, 6 things across the top of the fit. And if the person is a plus, they're doing great. If they're a plus minus, we see that as a coaching opportunity. But if anybody gets more than 3 minuses, then they're a bad fit for the company. So that helps create a certain data point. The other data point to take a look at we found is valuable is, especially if they're in a sales role, is are they paying for themselves? And there's going to be a ramp up time, certainly, and you know that as an entrepreneur that you're going to have to pay for training. That's just part of the deal. So if they've been in 6 months and they're still not producing, well, then it makes the decision a little bit more complicated if they meet all the values of the company, but they're just wrong, right person, right company, wrong seat. So sometimes we have taken a person and we have reassigned them to a different role within the organization because they fit the values of the company. They're a good fit for who we are as a team. They just are not a good fit in that job. It'd be like putting me in the accounting department. Not a good place for me to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you on that, man. Shifting gears here just slightly. So going back to when you were $600,000 in debt and you had to make these decisions and stuff, how important, you said you hired your coach and he came in and he helped you get your mindset right. Like, how important is it to first get your mindset right? And like, what were some key things like that you got to like have in place before you can go out and have success in business as far as mindset?
Well, for me at the time, especially because the imposter syndrome was rooted so deeply and I was so self-critical and self-negative. So we did a program every day where I had to report in the 5 positive things I did, not the 10 stupid decisions I made or the bad decision I made or whatever I wanted to call it at the time. And that was really powerful because immediately, my mind was always searching. All right, it's kind of like the end of the day, I've got homework to turn in, right? What are the 5 positive things I've done? And there were a couple of days at the beginning where I just didn't turn anything in. And at 6, 7 o'clock at night, the phone is going to ring. I didn't get my email from you. What's going on? And that was a really big support thing from a caring and compassionate standpoint, but also, it's hard to reframe and retrain your mind in 24 hours, especially when you've been, kicking your own butt for a decade. And so the first thing is we focus on something positive every day. The second thing is if there was a disappointment or there was, at the time we'd call it a failure, you could acknowledge it. You could spend about 10 minutes in it and then you had to let it go and immediately you had to go do something positive. So it was a really, again, that massive reframing. Over the course of time, I've realized that I used to suffer a lot from expectations of myself and expectations of others, and recognizing that did not serve me well. So for me, I replaced the word expectation with the word intention. So think about it like this. Take it out of business and take it into personal. You're going on a first date. Well, going on a first date with a lot of expectations typically is not going to go real well. But if you go into the first date with my intention is to meet a cool person. My intention is to have a good time. My intention is to hopefully get to know a new person. Worst case scenario, they're just a friend. And I kid you not, especially going into dealing with clients from a sales perspective or people on an interview perspective, they're all first dates if you really think about it, and you're connecting with another human being, you're getting to know them a little bit. But if you expect a client to buy from you on the first date, that's a lot of pressure on both sides of the fence. If you expect an employee to take a job offer on the very first interview, or better yet, you're the job seeker and you think you're going to get an offer on the first interview, that's a lot of pressure too. By shifting away from expectation and into intention, if you're a job seeker and you're going to go on an interview, my intention is to put my very best foot forward. My intention is to learn about the company as much as I possibly can. And my intention is to see, am I going to be able to provide them with value as an employee, as well as is that employer going to be able to provide me with the kind of work environment I want to be in? That just resonates a whole lot more than I expect them to give me 2 weeks vacation off the start, a company car, and 6-figure income. Yeah, that's a lot of unmet expectation there.
Dude, I think so far like that whole intention versus expectation was like a golden nugget to take away. Like they were just like going on a date or in sales, like it's like hand in hand pretty much. And by going into their setting the intention, but not getting tied to the expectation, like I think that can that's powerful stuff right there. I'm really glad that you mentioned and brought that up. A question as we close out here, man, I like to ask is, Todd, if you could go back to the very beginning of your entrepreneurial journey and give yourself just one piece of advice, not so much as in, advice as in things you regret, because I don't think you regret things that you've done because it made you who you are today, but more so a piece of advice just to give yourself a head start or a leg up as an underdog entrepreneur, what would that one piece of advice be?
For me, if it's just truly a business piece of advice, it would be to focus on margins, not on revenue. So much, especially in the staffing space, we get wrapped up in, we're in the pennies industry. Kelly Services, publicly held company, they do a great job at what they do, but they only make between 1% and 2% of the bottom line. As an entrepreneur, I'm sure your audience knows this, we can't live on 2% to the bottom line. It just doesn't going to work. So, for me, looking at the Kellys, the Manpowers of my space, it's focus on the margin, not on the revenue. And I think from a mindset perspective, it's be kind to yourself, be positive with yourself. Now, don't be, rose-colored glasses that everything's rosy. No, but have a sense of brutal reality. But again, going with that intention versus expectation, focusing on why I'm doing what I'm doing, because it's that why on the tough days when we all want to quit. And hand to God, there's been plenty of days when I've wanted to quit. The why I'm doing this is why I'm going to come back and do it one more day.
Dude, that is incredible right there. I love it, dude. So for everybody listening that wants to come learn more about Todd and everything that you got going on, where are all the places we can come check you out?
Well, I'm kind of everywhere. I'm on Instagram, on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, the whole 9 yards. But, Zach, I'd love the conversation with you today. And what I'd like to do is typically when I do a podcast, it's just, kind of humdrum a little bit at times. And I like your edge. I like your investment in the underdog entrepreneur. And I think so for those underdog entrepreneurs, anybody who found value in our conversation today, I'm happy to give an hour free of my time. They just go to my website, extraordinaryadvisors.com, fill out the form saying they want to have a conversation with me about anything, whether it's mindset, whether it's about business strategies. And I'm happy to give them that hour just as a payback for all the people that helped me when I was going through my underdog times. It just feels like a real nice opportunity to give back to your audience, to help somebody who might be wondering, gosh, should I keep doing this or am I doing it right? Let's have a conversation about it.
Dude, that is incredible that you're giving that time. And it speaks a lot about your character. Someone that's been on the Inc. 500 for six different times. That's pretty awesome, man. So Inc. 5000 6 different times. So what we're going to do is we're going to link up what you just mentioned, your website, in the show notes on underdogempowerment.com. Head on over there right now. Make sure you check out what Todd's got going on. Be sure to get that session. And I mean, that's powerful, stuff for an underdog entrepreneur just starting out. And once again, man, I thank you for carving out your time to come serve the Underdog fam. It's been incredible knowledge that you dropped here, and appreciate you a lot, Todd.
Zach, thanks so much for having me. I had a great time.
Awesome, my man. We'll talk soon. Now, obviously, there are many takeaways with this interview with Todd. Some of the key things that I really like to hit on here is definitely paying attention to the margins versus the revenue, because that could really get us in trouble. You got all these different expenses, the operations, the bookkeeping, all that. Like, you have to take into account to all of that and really dial in on your key metric, or else you are going to not stay afloat for long if you don't. That's one of the key takeaways from this episode. Another one was I really like how Todd digged into getting set on the intention and not caught up on the outcomes, on the results. Like that's so like how I gave that analogy when you go on a date. Like, if you're like so dialed in on the outcome, on the result of landing that girl or guy, and that you could blow it essentially, but if you just set the attention, like, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to learn as much about this person, see if it's a good fit, and just do everything that I can do and be totally cool with whatever the outcome may be. That's how you could really take it to the next level. And I thought those were some key points that Todd brought up. If you guys haven't already joined our Facebook group, head on over to Facebook. It's called Underdog Empowerment Movement. That's where we come together to lift each other up, to bounce ideas off each other, to figure out ways how to win, and to form strategic connections. And I can't wait to get to know you on a more personal level. And if you haven't already subscribed to this podcast and left an honest written review that takes 30 seconds of your time, pull out your phone right now on iTunes and leave us an honest written review if you're seriously deriving serious value from this podcast. And make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss none of this fire that we bring to you each and every Monday and Friday morning. Once again, my name is Zachary Babcock, and I'm here to help you scale your business to 6 and 7 figures without the stress, frustration, and overwhelm of trial and error. And I will see you on the next episode.
Thank you for tuning in to the Underdog Empowerment Podcast at www.underdogempowerment.com.
Never underestimate the underdog. We put them hours in to bring them dollars in. This that underdog empowerment. We put them hours in. to bring them dollars in.
My name is Zachary Babcock.